Hi and welcome to this week's GMBN Tech Show. Coming up on the show this week,
we've got a new tall boy,
a new Joplin from Juliana bikes,
and we spotted a prototype Yeti
and a prototype Giant. Okay, so starting the show this week, it's really that time of year where we start seeing clues of what we're going to see perhaps next year or at least the year after that. So prototype tech. Now, some of our roving reporters have been around at the EWS and various different places seeing bikes and stuff. And we've obviously reported on what appears to be SRAM's new access components in last week's show. Now we've got some more shots which you can see on screen here. Just want to speculate a few things about this. Now, as we've seen previously, you can see that the mech has a new mounting system, or at least for this particular model anyway. It mounts basically on the outside of the frame there. So it looks like it's got a revised version of the UDH sort of system there. No one so far is able to tell us much about it, but you can definitely see the main body and the pinnacle part of the mech is substantially smaller and slimmed down compared to the regular access model that you can see on screen right now, by comparison to that. And also the lower cage looks quite a lot slender compared to the current version you see on the market. Now the one you can see in the picture here, it almost looks as if the actual guide wheels are bigger, but I did a rough count on them. It looks like it's got 19 tooth or something like that. Hard to tell just looking at the video image here. So it puts it in the same ballpark as what we're currently seeing, but it does look as if it's all been slimmed down and looking like it's almost like an SL version of what Access actually is. And again, I'm making a sort of speculation here that they're losing the weight on the body of the mech, which as we know is quite substantial before, but you're gaining the support by the mounting system. So the one thing that's really essential with Access is basically keeping everything all in line, which is why they were so big, because electronic shifting has to be completely precise for it to retain that. But pretty cool stuff, I think. And also the cassette itself looks a bit different as well, not only in the way it's actually made, but if you look at the steps between the gearing, it looks like they're a bit closer. So slightly closer range gearing, although that said, complete speculation, you can't actually see what the biggest sprocket is. But if you look at the regular one with the 52 on it, you can actually see quite a step change between them. And this one looks a lot smoother, kind of like what you would expect on a race bike. But always good stuff to see, and hopefully more information on that soon.
It's looking good. Call me superficial, but I like the black and white kind of vibe that they're going with.
It looks
and the
lighter,
little power link
visually
as well is like black as well, which is really cool.
That is good actually, yeah, without, I didn't say that, the flat link chain, sort of the flat top chain like the roadies have.
Yeah,
it actually looks quite nice. I was against it to start with, but it's growing on me already.
Yeah, it's like an E-tap roadie chain. Also prototyping is Giant, who seem to be mucking around with a new rein. Now, I kind of noticed this at EWS in Leithen, and they, I spoke to them and they weren't quite ready to talk about anything yet, but we did spot a new frame that was a little bit more public hanging around the pits. So check this out on screen. Our cameraman got some footage of it, and it looks to be obviously a new carbon frame. The rein has largely been 29er with only one 27.5 model in aluminium, but this is potentially a mixed wheel size. They're also still using the twin link Maestro linkage system that they usually do, but as you can see, they've got a Fox Rad shock on there, so they're potentially testing something with Fox. We're not sure yet if it's the electronic shock that Jesse Melamed has been using, that we speculated on a couple of weeks back, but there's definitely a cover over the piggyback. Not sure if there's a sensor on the rear caliper just yet. But looking at that linkage, there is a potential flip chip sort of hidden away in there, which wouldn't be, you know, a big sort of speculation, seen as the Trance and the Reign E, the e-bike version of the Reign, is already using a flip chip. But whether that is for adjustable geometry or whether that is because it's potentially running a mullet and you might be able to use different wheel sizes in it, we just don't know just yet.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess.
It does look like in one of these shots you can see a complete side on, and it's hard to tell because of the lens the cameraman's using, but I think this one is definitely set up mullet style.
Yeah, it does look like it. Also, there's some sort of elongated bottle mounts and some weird stuff going around there in our shots, which mean might be a little bit of a storage solution.
Sandwich pocket?
glove box, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and speaking of glove box, storage boxes, sandwich pockets, it looks like the new Yeti. This one on screen here that looks very similar, admittedly, to the last generation of the SB150. So they haven't told us any information on this. Again, our roving cameraman just managed to get these clips at the most recent round of EWS. It does look very similar, but you look at it up close and then you more go back and forth between these images that we have here and the stuff on the website. You can see some apparent differences. So there's obviously a potentiometer on the rear shock, so they're doing some testing there to change the settings on the rear suspension. So my analogy of that is looking at the fact that Richie has been really well suited to the bike previously, so I can't imagine they would have been testing anything on the existing setup. So therefore something's changed about the feeling of the rear suspension for them to analyse their settings. Now if you look at the upper linkage on it, the way it's mounted onto the frame is slightly different. So previously the linkage was mounted to the outside of the frame and you had the hardware on the outside. This time it looks like it's internal. Which you could assume perhaps that the bearings are more outboard on it to give a bit more stiffness or perhaps slightly better bearing life on there. And it's also a little bit different down by the bottom bracket area. So there's a lot more space where you've got the sort of almost a shape where an e-bike motor would go basically down the front there. So the bottle cage system looks like it has a bit more breathing space. Maybe there's a glove box style thing in there. It would make sense for that and the size of the tube there. And there's also different routing for the cables and hoses on both non-drive side and drive side. So quite a few things going on there, but it's still using the Switch Infinity. We've yet to hear anything from Yeti about it, but looking quite cool. Always nice when there's a new Yeti on the horizon. And if we saw these ones, there's going to be loads of other ones that we haven't even seen yet.
Yeah.
Just floating around in plain sight.
What have we not spotted? Have
Cool,
you
Tommy,
spotted anything prototypey that we haven't noticed? Let us know down in the comments below.
Okay, so let's get into news then, and the first thing I want to talk about is a new bike from the We Are One composites company, the Arrival 170. So we've seen the 150 previously, and this one appears to have the same style frame on there. So this is a Canadian company hailing from Kamloops in BC. Now they're famous for actually making the bikes and having all of the sort of raw materials all locally using local businesses, and they're really proud of this. The construction of the bike, it's got, I'd say, quite an angular look for carbon. You were used to sort of the swoopy shapes, but this is quite like, I think, quite stern looking. Not in a bad way, I think it looks really cool. So the 152, sorry, I said the 150, 152, it's been updated, but essentially it's the same thing. The 170 is what I want to talk about here though. So 170mm travel out back, up to 190 on the front. It's an absolute bruiser of a bike, and it uses the same chassis as that 152. 29er front and rear. Strange colour names. They've gone for avocado and toast. I mean, let's face it, not colours, are they? The food, and people keep doing this, but really, really cool colours. Either way, yeah, definitely an Insta colour. So again, the carbon construction using raw materials all locally from Kamloops, which is great. Now there's 3 sizes available, medium, large and extra large, and head angle on this is 63.7, seat angle 76.6. Chainstay varies from 437 to a 441, size specific there, always nice to see. And the reach from 447 up to 497. So not the biggest, but if you look at the geometry of the 152, obviously because you're slamming the thing down a little bit, the reach actually increases. So the slacker and more aggressive a bike gets, you'll find the reach does get a little bit shorter. But 497 definitely isn't on the short side. So good sizing, and they offer 2 specs in both bikes, SP1 and SP2. We've only got Canadian and US dollar pricing at the moment. So the SP2 is 9599 Canadian dollars, 7675 US dollars, and the SP1 is 11899 Canadian and 9525 US dollars. I think they're really nice looking bikes, and I really am a fan of that angular styling. I think it's cool.
It looks nice. Speaking of fan of, I'm actually a fan of the looks of Juliana, which is still flying the flag for women-specific bikes, whether you agree with it or not. They are the sister company to Santa Cruz, so it should be no surprise that the Juliana bikes are receiving similar upgrades to what Santa Cruz have been upgrading with. And I'm not sure a show's gone by when we've done a press release on a new Santa Cruz.
A new week, a new Santa Cruz, pretty much, isn't it? Yeah.
So the new update this week is the Juliana Joplin, which is their sort of XC, long travel XC bruiser, basically. They say it's a little bit XC, a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll is their slogan. So check this out on screen. This is the Juliana Joplin. It is still a 120, 130 bike. where it used to be stocked with a 140 fork, now it's stocked with a 130 fork, although you can still run it with a 140. It remains a 29er. You still get it in the 3 carbon models, the C and the CC model. There is no aluminium option. It receives the same updates as many of the other Santa Cruzes, including the Tallboy, which Doddy will talk about in a second. So that means proportional chainstays, it means a glove box and threaded bottom brackets, UDH and the ISCG5 chain guide mounts. It comes in a new Bluebird Blue, getting rid of that gorgeous dusky pink, which I was absolutely in love with, but you can still buy the old version if you are well into that. It keeps the VPP, obviously, but it's been a little bit tweaked, much like the other Santa Cruzes that we've seen recently, where they've been tweaking that to have less peak anti-squat for more small bump sensitivity, and anti-rise has also been improved to allow less braking effects on the suspension. So it all sounds good. Geometry is largely the same. They didn't want to change it too much because they said it was much loved anyway, but the reach has been slightly lengthened. So you've got a new slightly longer reach of 405 in the extra small, 430 in the small, and 455 in the medium. The Joplins only come in extra small, small and medium. But it does come with sort of women's specific kit, so that means slightly narrower bars and the women's specific saddle. Head angle there is 65.7 degrees, and the seat angle ranges now from 76.8 to 76.6, depending on your size, as that is now more proportional. So yeah.
Can I ask you a question here? Right, we're going to talk about Tallboy in a second, but in fact, let me talk about Tallboy and then I'll ask you a question afterwards. I'm genuinely interested to know. So the Tallboy, basically same but different. So it's the, well, I wouldn't say the men's, it's the universal version of the Juliana. Originally, this bike started life as 100mm. It's now running 120 with a 130 on the front. And what they say is basically minor tweaks this time. It ain't broke. Yep, so I've just made some tweaks. Again, available in C and CC, no longer in aluminium. Extra small through to XXL, which is what I want to ask you about in a minute, with the sizing of the Juliana. Colourways now, so they've got gloss ultra blue and a sort of a taupe sort of colour. I actually really like the blue. Surprisingly, I would normally go for the more earthy tones, but it does look really good. Geometry on the bike, so head angle, you're talking, well, in the high settings, there's 2 settings. 65.7, seat angle between 76 and 77.1. Obviously it changes with the size in there. Same with chainstays, 430 up to 443, so nice and long on the bigger bikes there. 405 up to 520mm reach, so absolutely massive really on the longer size. Prices to be confirmed, there's going to be loads of different models as always in the Santa Cruz range there. And the same thing with the suspension. Slightly less progression on there, slightly less in terms of peak time, anti-squat and anti-rise there, for better braking and slightly more comfortable suspension. I find it kind of interesting that a lot of brands are starting to do this at the moment. You know, it's only a few years ago everyone's like, we need it to be more progressive, and then, you know, we need more anti-rise and more anti-squat, and now everyone's a bit like, well, you know, there's a time and a place. And actually a bit of a shout out to Nukeproof, because in some of their bikes, I kind of laughed talking about this like speed sensitive anti-squat and anti-rise. So when you're in the lower gears, you get more of it basically, and in the higher gears you get less of it. So the bike feels more supple when you're at speed, and it sits up a bit when you're pedaling at low speed. But anyway, I want to talk about the sizing thing, right? So the Juliana you can get in, what do you say, extra small, small, medium. Yeah. But you can get the Tallboy in extra small through to XXL. Yes. What would you have? Well,
I'm usually a small, actually. I think I have ridden a Joplin many years ago.
You could ride either, couldn't you, of the two brands?
And let's be clear, Santa Cruz and Juliana never make the claim that it's a different bike specific for women. It is literally the same bike. Yeah, I think people buy into the brand because it supports a lot of women's specific work and branding. Yeah. I would go for a small, I think, being 5'1". Extra small is very small.
In that or in the Tallboy? Would you stick with Juliana?
If it was in that dusky pink, I'd definitely go for that. it's like this kind of colour,
it makes me
that.
wonder, you know, it makes me wonder, in fact, asking anyone out there, if you're in the market for a Juliana bike, for example, would you actually pick the Tallboy over the Juliana? And if so, why? Which one would you prefer? I'd say it's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
the options are open there to pick what you want, and I think it's a good thing.
I'd pick whatever colour I like the most. It's got to be
no problem. I'm that shallow as well.
Okay, it's quiz time. And speaking of Juliana bikes, our first question is, who was Juliana bikes named after? Next question is, what is the name of the rear suspension design used by most giant bikes? I believe I did mention this. And third question, what does the SB in Yeti Cycles model name stand for?
That's a good question.
I didn't know this.
Interesting. Really?
No.
Ah, nice. Okay, so let's pick up some comments from last week's show where I think we were talking about rat rods and stuff,
yes,
weren't we?
we were.
So the first one from Rotty Shep Caliber says, I would definitely rat rod my bike. It would keep the thieves away. That's one way of looking at it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's good. Christian Haug said, got one myself, but a proper old bike, a Nikolai Helios FR, nicknamed Frankenstein.
Yeah, those things are amazing.
I wonder if it rusted itself or whether he's
not with the amount of alloy in those things, flipping heck. In fact, Nikolai actually sent me one of the books as a thank you for taking some photos for them. I'll bring it in and show you because you've got to see some of the stuff in this book. And this thing is so heavy, it's unbelievable. But it's not necessarily like a catalogue of their stuff. It's looking at the way aluminium bikes are manufactured. Really quite cool.
It's a beautiful bike.
Just give it a bit of love on the show, I think.
Yeah, it includes Martin's old tandem, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that's still hanging around the place somewhere. Feedback Loop says, in my opinion, painting carbon with rust is as silly as wrapping steel with carbon look vinyl. I think all the marks and scars have to be earned to tell the story of a bike's life.
Ooh.
I kind of go both ways. I get exactly what you're saying there. But also, you know, it's just stylising something, which is kind of nice.
I'd much rather have a fake rusty carbon bike than a fake carbon looking alloy bike.
I'd rather have a rusty steel bike.
So Jane Flake says, I seem to recall that there is a paint available that has ferric oxide in it to give the proper rusty metal look without damaging the frame underneath. Yeah, actually, I've seen this on some VW vans before, and it has metal in it which rusts over time. But it's just the paint
and not the metal under it.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
But you never know with VW, do you?
Hey, she also says, I prefer my shiny bikes rather than filthy, rusty looking things, which, given that I ride old tat, is rather surprising. So she likes shiny old tat, not new old tat looking stuff.
I get that. Kind of makes sense. Jason Ferris says, this is awesome how you guys talk about this topic, because I just started sanding my Specialized Hard Rock Sport last night. Not sure what I'm going to do for it yet, but I think I'm going to do a camouflage paint job on it.
Ah, right, stay tuned, because in the middle of October, I'm going to be releasing a video on home spraying your bike. Now, I sprayed up a carbon bike, I've done some fades, some weird effects, and I've compared kind of paint for bikes and car spray paint. So check that out soon.
I didn't realise you could get both.
You can get bike-specific stuff, and you can get car, you know, rattle cans.
That could be dangerous.
I know.
Interesting. Nice.
We've got another one here from Michael Woodbury, who said, having been a neighbour to the late Ed Big Daddy Roth, no idea who that is, I thought I would do a little mansplaining on the origin of the term rat rod. It refers to his hot rod creations along with his rat fink character. So yeah, apparently there's a rat fink festival held every year in June in Utah. Dedicated to this. And
Big Daddy Roth is a cartoonist, illustrator, pinstriper and custom car designer and builder.
Well, thank you very much. So he's combined the two and hence Rat Rod.
And the last comment this week, another great one from Saddle Weary, says, the rat rods remind me of Dolly Parton's quote, it costs a fortune to look this cheap. Oh, I love it. I didn't know that quote.
She's a genius. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks for the great comments.
Speaking of old tat, it's that time, isn't it?
I was about to lovingly introduce some rewind entries, or old tat, as someone here says.
I kid.
So if you've got anything old, retro, rewindy-ish, please send it to us. There's an on-screen little link there, and there's one down there you click on. Upload your photos, tell us all about it. It could be old magazines, could be race plates from back in the day, could be photos, video, literally anything. Starting this week, this is a wicked one to see. So not quite old school, so we're talking like noughties here. Spooky bandwagon. I guess kind of late 90s maybe, something like that. So this is from Danbury in Essex. And Liam says, I had one of these way back in the day, but it was stolen from outside a pub. I saw this frame come up on Facebook Marketplace, cheap as chips, and nostalgia took me straight back to my teens. It'd been welded around the bottom bracket where it's cracked basically, powder coated the horrible green and built up with a mix of new and old school bits, and more importantly, bits like brakes. And there he is back in the day on his original one, which is quite cool.
Is it a steel bike then?
No, alloy.
Is it?
Yeah, alloy frame. You can see it's had a serious bit of welding done. Down the bottom. That's a Frank the Welder bike, like these ones. So, yeah, I mean, it looks sick, like with those Marzocchi Z1s on the front there. It's kind of timeless, to be honest. You know, you look at that at a glance, and although it's made from alloy, it's not the same material. That could look, you know, the layout of the bike is very similar to modern Curtis bikes and stuff.
Yeah, I'd say so. It doesn't look old at all.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. I mean, it's really nice. Nice bit of work done on there. Nice to see it. So that was the crack, and you can see the bit of alloy work that's been done down the bottom bracket.
Nice.
I can feel a lot of engineers out there wincing at this, but it's going to be fine, isn't it? It's just a jump bike. And then Irfan from Singapore said, I stopped mountain biking in 2006 and always wanted an IT1. Just started riding in 2022, and that's the first thing I got. Still rides like a dream. So in case you're wondering what this is a GT high pivot gearbox bike. I think it used a Nexus hub as the gearbox. I think I'm right in saying. I'll have to ask Chris Smith because he used to have one of these. In fact, he snapped one of these. But that's Chris Smith, and he does weird stuff in the bike. These things were built really nicely, and it's kind of a bit of a look at the future actually. In the sort of era when you had bikes like Brooklyn Machine Works making like unbelievable steel bikes using this sort of styling, GT were like, no, let's get involved, let's commit to something quite cool. Nice to see it, and it looks almost, you've got the right wheels on it. I think that didn't come with that fork, if I remember. It might have had a Boxer on there or something, or perhaps a Fox 40. But it's nice to see it. It looks pretty cool.
It's a predecessor to the Fury then, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And just one last thing I just want to mention is I've got some of those 5 dev cranks on my bike at the moment, which actually they're going on a project bike. But quite a few people have commented saying they look quite old school rather than being brand new. And in fact, one of the judges from the Muck-Off Show and Shine at the Melbourne, a guy called Hatch, who just knows everything, he's got an encyclopedic knowledge, was he sent me a message with this set of cranks, which were made by Castle, a downhill bike company. Giovanna Benazzi and various other racers used them in the 90s. With these cranks, and if you look at them side by side, actually there's a good likeness to them. But the old cranks have got, you know, the big old horrible chainring mount on them, and obviously they're going to be nothing near the quality of the newer cranks, but I think they look really cool. Definitely could be used, I think, the 5 dev cranks in some kind of like modern retro bike rebuild.
I did think that when I saw them. I wonder if they took inspiration or whether just, you know, good design just happens again and again.
It's funny because some people that have not seen that sort of machining on cranks, they think they look incredible and like it's never been done before, but there's definitely an old school feel about it. Maybe that's why I like them so much. Who knows? But, thanks for sending everything in, as always.
Okay, time for those quiz answers. So, who was Juliana Bikes named after? Well, it was Juliana Furtado, of course, legendary bike rider and founder. So what is the name of the rear suspension design used by most giant bikes? It was, of course, the Maestro suspension.
Indeed.
And what does SB in Yeti Cycles stand for? I didn't know this. Superbike, apparently.
Yeah. Do you know what? If it was any other brand than Yeti calling their own bike Superbike, I'd just laugh at them.
It's still like, a bit cocky,
you call your own bike a Superbike? But it's a Yeti and somehow it is, so you get away with it.
Well, cocky. Anyway, thanks for watching today, and hopefully we'll see you again next week. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new.
Ta-ta!